Hey, welcome to another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show, listener. I'm your host, Don Kleppen, and if it's your first time here, welcome, thank you. This is a show where we try to take a journalistic look at all things cannabis. I'm a broadcaster myself here in Chicago, Illinois, where I record this and where I live and work. I do news and traffic on the radio. You can hear me on Lou Manfredini's House Smarts Radio Saturday mornings on WGN, 720 a.m., runs from 6 to 10 a.m., and then David Hochberg's Home Sweet Home Chicago from 10 to noon. I do news for them every week, and I fill in on WGN on other times, randomly. And then I do traffic for iHeartRadio. That's my full-time job. You can hear me on most of iHeart's Chicago stations doing traffic, Kiss FM, Rock 95.5, 100.3, 93.9 The Light, blah, blah, blah. And so that's my regular job, and I took my experience as a professional broadcast journalist, and I married it with my personal experience as a cannabis user for 15 or so years. I started in my late teens, and I kind of started leaning on it in my 20s as a way of getting to sleep regularly, which is something I'd struggled with in my life, and I've leaned on it since then for all kinds of discomfort or negative quality of life symptoms or conditions or circumstances. I lean pretty heavily on cannabis for whatever unpleasantness I might be feeling, nausea, sickness, anxiety. There's any kind of condition where you might be, wishing that you were feeling something else. I tend to turn to cannabis for that. And I wanted to explore, as more people were doing research, legitimate research on cannabis as it becomes a more normalized part of our society, kind of pulling it from the criminal, seedy underbelly, this unaccepted part of society because of the reefer madness and all that propaganda we dealt with in the last century. Now we're moving into this place where it's becoming normalized and it's becoming an accepted part of society. And what I felt as a journalist, I felt like the conversation around cannabis was still very, very limited. And I felt that it was still lacking a lot, especially as people are finding out this new and important information as it does become normalized and more studies are being done. So I felt like it was, incumbent upon me to start doing something about it, start having the kinds of enlightened conversations that I've always had with my friends, while we're sharing a joint or sharing a bowl, usually late night at a party, some alcohol involved as well. But I've had these conversations with more and more and more people outside of those circumstances too, because more and more people are interested now in finding out more about cannabis because it is becoming more acceptable, which is a great thing. So here on the Cannabis Man podcast, that is what we do. We are talking with newsmakers, we're talking with entrepreneurs, we're talking with researchers, we talk with people who are at the forefront, the cutting edge of the cannabis knowledge frontier. These are people who are taking little steps forward and chipping away at the vast unknown that is the iceberg of what we don't know about cannabis. And I want to talk to these people, and I want to bring those interviews right to you. And I've got a great interview for you today with some masters of growing and breeding cannabis. These are two gentlemen who work at Deep Space Creations. One of them you've heard from before, Matt Ross, my very first guest on the show. He founded Deep Space Creations, sort of a master breeder, geneticist, has a lot of experience as a breeder, and he brought, at some point as he was starting the company, he brought along a young up-and-comer master grower, Ethan Stockton. And both of them have stopped by to share some of that knowledge about what makes for a good grow. If it's your first time with a home harvest and you have no idea what you're doing, these are the guys that can kind of walk you through what's important to focus on. There's a lot of information out there. Anybody who has looked into starting their own cannabis crop at home knows you go on YouTube, you can type in questions, and it's kind of a crapshoot as to the quality of that information. You might get some great people talking about some great stuff. You may get some, hucksters trying to sell you something and they really aren't giving you much good information whatsoever. And it's hard to know which direction to place your focus. What's more important? Good lights, good soil, good humidity control? What's most important for a good product, a good harvest result? And so those are the kinds of things that Matt and Ethan are talking about. They also have an event coming up this coming weekend from when I'm recording this, February 18th 18th out in Aurora, where they're going to be at Ignite Vape and Glass, and they're going to be sharing exactly this kind of knowledge with people in a new sort of activity, which they're calling Breeder Features. So if you're interested in finding out more about this, stay tuned, listen to this interview, or find out how you can get involved and check out that event, whether the one coming up in Aurora or some of these future Breeder Features. If you're interested in finding out how to grow better cannabis, or even if you're just curious as to what makes for a good product, Matt and Ethan are the guys to talk to and hear from, and you can hear more from them later in this episode. Of course, we have the News Joint Wrap. I'm going to share with you some news stories, some other events coming up in and around Illinois having to do with cannabis. I'm going to share with you my strain of the week, Lovely Sativa. You know I love those. And I've got another news story to get to, topic which I thought was worth your attention here as we roll on through this 40th episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast. Here we go. There we are. That is the theme brought to you by my man Yusu Kim, aka Good Son, wonderful musician around the Chicago area. You can follow him on Instagram at I Am a Good Son. Usually releases his new singles there, and he puts out great music. Thanks again, Yusu. That theme is ballin'.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Roy. And we are the hosts of the Wandering Jews podcast.
It's a show where two youngish Jewish dads get baked and wonder what it means to be a Jew today.
That's right, Josh. Each episode, we smoke a different strain of cannabis and delve into a high-minded conversation about Jewish culture, learning, and current events.
So pack your bowls and check out Wandering Jews by clicking the link in the show notes or find us wherever you get your podcasts. Wandering Jews. It's a podcast for the curious token Jew.
L'chaim!
Let's check out the News Joint Wrap. This is brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And let's start with the 2023 Illinois Cannabis Convention, which has been set for June, right at the beginning of summer there. That's lovely. Illinois News Joint is partnered with NECANN, NECANN, to help bring readers and followers the most up-to-date info about the third annual Cannabis Convention for Illinois. They're going to offer discounted prices on general admission tickets as well. Illinois News Joint's also giving away free tickets in the coming months, so keep an eye out for that. NECANN has moved from South Lakeshore to Schaumburg. That's where it'll be this June in 2023. The Schaumburg Convention Center is going to run from Friday, June 2nd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It'll also run Saturday, June 3rd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can get 50% off general admission tickets by clicking a link at IllinoisNewsJoint.com or just going to NECANN's website and using the promo code NEWSJOINT50. You can do all of that. NECANN is something special. These conventions are very, very exciting. CROO launches a Cannabis Disparity and Availability Study. That would be the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office, or CREW, if you like. Recently announced the official commissioning of the Disparity and Availability Study for adult use cannabis licenses in Illinois. This is a requirement by the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, the CRTA. The Disparity and Availability Study starts 12 months of research. It's going to measure accessibility, whether any discrimination exists, whether it impacts entry and participation, and suggests any potential remedies for Illinois' cannabis regulation. The finished results of the report will be given to the Illinois General Assembly and Governor, and I will certainly report on this study's findings when it is made available, because it will certainly be publicized as well. The purpose, just to get a little more into it here, is to collect and analyze data. It'll report on whether any discrimination exists in the Illinois cannabis industry. And if there is a finding that it does exist, the disparity study will evaluate the impact of the discrimination on the state, its residents regarding entering and participating in the state's cannabis industry. The disparity study will also include recommendations, as I mentioned, for reducing or eliminating any identified barriers to entry. Now, that's something very exciting. I mean, I guess it depends on how much you believe, how much faith you put in the Illinois elected officials here, and totally understand if the answer is zero. Totally understand if you have no faith. But I want to say, I have been talking with some people on the show, elected officials, guys like Bob Morgan of Deerfield, who put a bill on Governor Pritzker's desk to protect Illinois employees from any negative actions their employers might take were they to test positive for cannabis, even though cannabis has been legal medicinally and adult use recreationally for some time now. There was still the ability for companies, because, private employers in the state, they could take negative action against an employee for testing positive for cannabis, even though it was legal. Bob Morgan, state representative, he filed a bill and Governor Pritzker signed it so that is no longer allowed in the state of Illinois. If you are an Illinois employee, thanks to Rep. Bob Morgan, you don't have to fear any actions taken by your employer if you test positive for cannabis. That is an accomplishment from the Illinois state legislature. I would also like to point out the recently passed 5 sick days over the course of a year for all employees. This is part-timers, this is freelancers, this is anybody who has a job in Illinois. The government in Springfield just passed 5 sick days. Now, I know that is, you compare it to Europe, you compare it to some other countries with some better socialized medicine there. It's obviously still not enough. I think, if 5 sick days is all you have for the year, it still puts people in a very awkward position, a very tough position of having to decide whether they can take a sick day, whether they can afford to take it, or if they need to save it for, the real disaster that's coming down the pipe. It's not perfect, but I just wanted to point those out as recent examples of what I think of as victories by the Illinois legislature. And even though there may be some hopelessness out there, even though you may not believe that they can do things for us, I choose to think positively and be optimistic that these barriers to entry that this study will definitely be finding. There's no question about it in my mind. I've talked with people on the show about it. The state is asking for something like $250,000 to apply for the lottery license dispensary. You need to pay something like $250,000 even to get a slot on that lottery. And I've had guests on the show who have said that the state is not giving that money back to applicants. So that, to me, right there is obviously a massive barrier to entry. And that's discriminatory, okay? How many people have $250,000 that they've got lying around that they can afford not to see ever again just to take a chance, to take a swing at the lottery of getting a cannabis license, a dispensary license? So I know that this study's going to find evidence of discrimination and barriers to entry. And then I believe that they will have recommendations to reduce or eliminate those identified barriers. And I believe that maybe we will see in 5-6 years, maybe less, we'll see the implementation of those suggestions, and Illinois will not be so obstructed. It will not have so many barriers to entry for different people looking to get into the cannabis industry. And Kush 21, Jacksonville, is going to host its grand opening on Friday. From when I'm recording this, that would be February 17th. A year ago, this is the final article I'll read from IllinoisNewsJoint.com here today for the Newsjoint wrap. But a year ago today, Washington State's longest operating cannabis dispensary retailers, Kush 21, they applied for a dispensary license in Illinois. It received its official license last Friday. This Friday, February 17th, Kush 21 is set to host a ribbon cutting for its official grand opening in Jacksonville. The ribbon cutting will be happening at 10 a.m. You can find Kush 21 at 1112 Veterans Drive next to the city's post office and Ashley Furniture in Jacksonville. It's also set to host cultivators, live music, and a food truck. The Jacksonville retail store open 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. It'll be the first Kush 21 dispensary in Illinois. It's boasting 4,300 square feet of retail space, more than 1,000 products for sale. Kush 21 Jacksonville will offer a variety of deals and community-based discounts with regular updates posted at its website. You can find out more about Kush 21 and that grand opening on the 17th, as well as the other events and news stories that I mentioned. All of that is available for you all the time at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Listener, my guests today, and yes, that is plural, we're doubling up here, and I'm very excited to speak with both of them. We have some master genetics masters here, master breeders and growers. The two of them are very, very knowledgeable in the field of creating great cannabis strains, as is noted by a lot of the great work they're doing at Deep Space Creations. We have the founder of Deep Space Creations here, Matt Ross, as well as one of his young stars up and coming in the breeding and growing community. That would be one Ethan Stockton as well. And they have a very exciting event coming up out in Aurora, a new breeder feature where these creators of Chem de la Chem, which they've got at Deep Space Creations, along with many other very exciting strains of cannabis, they'll be featuring those out in Aurora. And both of them have stopped by today to talk a little bit about this event and the work they're doing there. Listener, please welcome Matt Ross and Ethan Stockton. Welcome, fellas.
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for having us.
Hey, good to be here. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks, guys. My pleasure. And yeah, I know, doubling up is always kind of an interesting interview style. I like it. It's kind of a fun, more energetic little panel here. So I appreciate you guys kind of, just joining together. And Matt, obviously, I've spoken with you before on the show, and I'm happy to talk with you again. Ethan, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of, let us and the listeners kind of know what got you started in cannabis and how you got in with Deep Space here.
2015 is when I actually joined into the industry. I started working with one of Matt's brothers, Jackson, and through him, I had the opportunity to meet Matt. And as Matt was leaving to go take an opportunity up in Chicago, where he's been for a minute, I was able to take over a facility that he had been running and operating and kind of carry the torch. And it was in that moment at that company that, Matt kind of opened it up. He gave me a grip of different crosses, different seeds, some stuff that hadn't been ran yet, some stuff that hadn't been tested. And, he knew just through Jackson and through the work that I had done with, the previous company I'd been at, that, those seeds, those genetics were in good hands. And kind of from there I took... these were some older crosses with some, Lemon G, some Fire OG, some different I-95 crosses that we were playing around with earlier on. And I'd say that was probably 2016 or so, 2017 maybe. So I've kind of been working, with Deep Space from that time, carrying forward. And it's been a good journey the whole time. Been pretty excited working with Chem de la Chem. It made things easy, working with good genetics, having access to quality. I didn't have to question. I didn't have to hunt for cuts. These were, from Matt, the source that he gets these things from. And we just started with good stock, good seed stock, and it made things a lot easier. So just kind of continuing with that, outcrossing and bringing different varieties in. It's been a fun ride. But yeah, I've been with Deep Space now for 6 years probably. Just working some projects and stuff and helping out with some of the feminized lines and regulars here and there, but mostly some of the feminized stuff. So
gotcha.
It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Sounds like, Matt spotted some budding talent, no pun intended, early on, and seems like it was, did good to kind of, blaze that torch, open the door, and obviously you want to, I think, you want to work with good people, especially when you're starting something, and something like Deep Space, obviously, that's very, very cool. And Matt, just kind of going back to that, I know when we first spoke, last time on the show, you mentioned that you kind of came from, that you had spent some time in Colorado, and why you like Illinois' market and whatnot. When you started Deep Space, Matt, what was kind of your philosophy in starting this genetics company and breeding, just to kind of give a refresher if anybody didn't hear that first interview,
Yeah, the motivation really was just to create genetics and to grow weed that not only I liked, but my friends and my colleagues liked. We always seem to be searching for something obviously more potent, but the flavors, the chem itself is, you look for like the raunchiest. We were just trying to like top each other, like who had the dirtiest cut of chem that we could smoke. As we continued on, it kind of was just really a hobby, and eventually people started asking to buy the seeds from me, and I wasn't going to deny them for sure. And it turned into more of a side hustle, and it still is to this day the same. We're still just really a small boutique breeding company that's just trying to really just supply a small group of people with Firekim genetics. Like, it's never really been I never expected to retire on deep space or anything like that. It was just really something to do, because really that's all we had was just growing doe.
For sure. Yeah, I totally understand that, and I think that's, again, very, very cool. Seems like, that sort of motivation, as you mentioned, just kind of wanting to provide people with good bud to smoke and kind of share with your friends, outdo your friends in like a friendly competition for making the best and tastiest stuff. And seems like you really came out of that on top with Chem de la Chem, because that obviously has I think put deep space on the map, and that strain is incredibly popular, and I have had a chance to try it now, thankfully. And listener, if you haven't, definitely go get yourself some at whichever dispensary you can, because that stuff is always fire, and it does have a unique taste, as Matt was talking about. I'm curious, guys. So, obviously the deep space is the genetic side, and Matt, you just kind of mentioned the growing part of it as well. For people, who might be just starting out, like somebody like me, kind of just getting into the growing journey, who's never before had a cannabis crop. I'm curious as to what both of you, and we can start with you, Ethan, and then if Matt, if you have anything to add, feel free. But I'm curious, what are some of the basics for a good grow, or maybe some mistakes that you can remember from early on in your own journey that you would try and advise people to maybe watch out for as they get started? What do you think, Ethan?
Yeah, if you're starting, the journey as a home grower, you've got a couple decisions to make. I'd say first thing, I've seen a lot of people with really killer setups that will get going that don't have the right genetics or get cuts that are dirty. And so the first thing is finding quality genetics. There's a number of, breeders out there. There's Deep Space. There's a number. But there's also, ordering from websites and places where, I don't want to disparage anything, but, if you guys are looking to get started, the genetics is the best place. Finding a good, solid connection with somebody who's grown before, who has cuts or seeds, that's going to be one of the bigger factors to look at. If you have access to good quality genetics, from there, one of the big things is just really being able to provide a consistent environment for the plants. So, being able to monitor the temperature, the humidity in the daytime with the light on, but also when the light shuts off. A lot of times we'll see humidity spikes when the temperature drops, when the lights turn off. And that's going to make it a lot harder for you to have a successful crop. One of the things that, people think a lot of the time is, well, it's weed, it'll grow like a weed. And kind of to an extent, that's true. I mean, these plants can take a heck of a lot of abuse and still come out with a product. But, the part of going back to some of the deep space philosophy, in a way, and I think anybody that's growing, for themselves to consume, should adopt this sort of philosophy as well. But just care and treating the plant and giving it a stress-free environment from the beginning, when you pop that seed or take that cut, all the way through veg, all the way through flower. A stress-free environment will yield more, but also not just biomass, it'll yield more resin. And that's kind of what we're all, chasing to some extent is, the terpenes that are enclosed in that trichome head, the THC, and the other flavanols and cannabinoids and things like that. So the thing that I've always thought of is anytime you start a grow, you start with an A+. Everybody could start with an A+, and you can only lose points. You can't ever really regain some of that. If you had a rough veg, you can still bring it back and get a decent flower crop out of it. But man, you're going to put yourself back a couple of weeks, and you never know. If you impact the roots in a bad way, you're going to have trouble. So one of the things is just a stress-free environment from when you pop that seed all the way through flower, and then taking care of that plant as it's curing, as it's drying. Those are some important factors. But I'd say top would be genetics. Second would be the ability to provide a proper environment. And that includes, third would probably be the lights, having proper, enough light. This plant will eat. This plant is hungry, and the more light you can provide while keeping up with the food, you can really maximize your yields and really get some good product out of it. But those are probably the top three things I'd say, just good lighting, good environment, good genetics. You can go the soil route, you can go the, cocoa, rock wool, hydroponic type route. I've seen smoked all of it. It's all good. As long as the care is there, that's the big thing. You can pick a method, stick with it, master that. But I think oftentimes what we see too is, sometimes people, it can be kind of confusing, right? You go online, you watch a couple YouTube videos, you read a couple of articles, and you could be thrown left, right, and center and not have any good idea on like what is the true pathway. So, just finding a source of knowledge and information and just sticking with that one method, I think will go a long way. If you tinker a lot, there's so many variables that can impact, how your plant grew, how it yielded, how the taste is at the end result. And so manipulating the least amount of those variables really kind of lets you know what's actually impacting positive or negative. So Sometimes we see people just try to do too much early on, but the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. It works. It worked really well. So that'd be my kind of take on it, I guess you could say. Yeah,
good rule for life, I think, the KISS rule. And you mentioned a good point, Ethan, about the deluge of information that's out there. I think it can be overwhelming for people who don't have the experience. You go on YouTube, you try and find some stuff, and all of a sudden you got 12 different directions to go in. You don't know which one is the true north, which way you should be going. And what you just pointed out with the genetics, the consistent environment, and lighting and whatnot, I think that's great for anybody who's, looking to do this and keep it simple. And on that note, I see on the Deep Space Creations Instagram page, which, listener, it's definitely something I recommend you check out. It's at Deep Space Creations _LLC. And it says on there that NeptuneSeedBank.com is where people can find some of the Deep Space products. Is that right?
Yeah. You can get Deep Space at Neptune. You can get us at Seed Bazaar. We're also on Attitude Seed Bank, which is the largest seed bank, I believe, in the world for cannabis.
Gotcha.
You can also email us on the header there on the Deep Space page. This coming up Saturday on the 18th, we actually have a little meet and greet that we're doing at Ignite Vape and Glass, which is in Northern Aurora. We'll be there at 4:30. We'll have seeds. We'll have some seed pots for sale. And we'll just be there to give information if people have questions. I guess free consulting, I guess is what it's called. But
that's awesome. We're just
going to be shooting the shit.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I see the flyer here on the Instagram page. You mentioned, Matt, that's coming up at the Aurora Cannabis Club, and that's this Saturday, the 18th, from when we're recording this now. And the free consultations, like you said, are there. And just, kind of as we're talking about, people who might be interested in finding out more about some genetics, how to go about, where to find, the good stock, and what mistakes to avoid if you're trying your first crop, or what to focus on. Some of the stuff Ethan was just talking about. It sounds like all that great information is going to be available this Saturday, February 18th, in Aurora at Ignite Vape and Glass, which is awesome. So good on you guys for getting out there. I think the breeder feature thing is really cool because it allows people it seems to me it would allow them an approachable method of getting some of this information, of talking to people like you guys who are experts, and do this all the time, and you've gotten knowledge over, years of practice and stuff. This is exactly the kind of event that I think is going to help a lot of people out. So well done, and I hope to see more of this stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting to, once you get with people and you start finding out, just the issues that they have, and they want to take the right steps to grow proper cannabis, but there's just, it can be daunting. It can be as crazy as they don't like popping their own seeds because they don't have a good germ rate, because they just don't have guidance on a certain technique. And we're happy to give information, and show people what we learned, because that's how we got the information. We met growers that were kind enough to show us their techniques and not hoard their ideas and just kind of spread the love, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I was just going to tack on that, one of the things that is difficult to some extent in Illinois is that versus Denver, at least, one of my comparisons is Denver had so many craft grows, smaller grows, and big ones too, that there was such a community of people who could just kind of spitball ideas and talk. And the fact that the majority of us that would get together, I mean, in some of these parts in northern Denver, you can go to a bar and it's more people with badges and growers at that bar, after work than there's just, regular workers and whatnot. And so just the ability to information share, I think that kind of helped fast track, at least for me. Because I had grown in Texas before for years, but I was very quickly humbled coming to Colorado, realizing like, oh, wow, those techniques, what I was doing, that's not the way. It worked, but it's not the way. And so I think, in Illinois, there are, some craft grows that are starting to pop up, and there's some bigger MSO type companies that are here, but they're so few and far between that you just don't have as many people that are growing and have grown. The ability to just sit on break and shoot the breeze with a group of growers on like what's working for you and what's not. It's kind of hard sometimes in Illinois, and I think these events are cool for that purpose. Especially because we get to talk one-on-one. We get to look at pictures. To just meet people that love doing kind of what we love doing. So it's a good opportunity. It's a lot of fun. We did a pop-up. We've done a couple actually already, and they're super exciting. They're really fun. It's just cool to even have someone just sit there and chill for 20-30 minutes and just shoot the breeze. So it's a good time. I'm excited that we're able to do something like this in Illinois and kind of push the culture and teach people what we love doing.
Yeah, for sure. And agreed on that front. I mean, that network of knowledge you're kind of talking about that's baked into a place like Denver, Colorado, California, maybe Oregon, some places where cannabis, and there's been a culture of it for a long time, that knowledge is there in a community and it might be more accessible, kind of like you guys are talking about. Whereas a place like Illinois, that really doesn't exist because there's just not the same kind. The culture wasn't here, not out in the open. There wasn't a wide network of people who are gathering together and kind of sharing the knowledge. And so again, it is why these events like the one coming up in Aurora on the 18th, so cool. Resin came up a little earlier. I know we were talking, Ethan, about some of the, something that as you mentioned, we're all kind of looking to harness the trichomes and the real valuable stuff of crops. And one of the questions that I had is, I've been hearing a lot about some products of like live rosin, for instance, like some rosin oil, and I've been hearing a lot of people rolling up little bits of it and just putting it into food or putting it into joints. And I actually haven't tried this for myself yet, but I've heard nothing but good things. And I was curious for both of you guys, Ethan and Matt, but the live rosin, what is this product? How is it made? And I'm kind of curious, is it similar to the resin of what gets gunked up in like a glass piece after using it for several months? Like what is live rosin and how do you guys go about making it and what's good about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So rosin versus resin, just off the top, if it's a live resin product, very different than the resin that you're talking about in the bowl. When I was in Texas, that was, taking resin hits, when you couldn't find any product for weeks, you're just scraping your bowls together and grabbing roaches out of your ashtray.
Right. That's what I was thinking of. Like, yeah, should we call that dead resin, right? Like if this is live resin, the good stuff, like is the stuff that just gathers in bowls, like is that just dead resin? Because nobody wants to be in that position to be scraping that stuff. I've been there.
I don't know in the current state, 2023, I don't know that we've classified it. I think dead resin would be a good, hopefully we've put that behind us. Hopefully that's in the past for everybody.
Right, right.
But there is the dead resin, right? And then live resin is going to be product that, flour, that is frozen, usually within 15 minutes of chopping that plant down. It's a quick process to preserve quality, to preserve the terpenes and all of it. Live resin is something that it's a frozen product that gets ran through a butane extraction. And there's a lot of there's CRC that people are doing, which is kind of controversial, but the basics of it is that it's ran through some butane, and then you get, like traditionally back in the day, like 2015, I think 13, even before that, I think Kind Bill had created the first live resin. But basically, it was out of a capacity issue, having too much product and also just wanting to know, like, what does this plant taste like? Can you get it in a resin form, in a shatter, wax, sugar consistency where it tastes and smells like it does on the stalk right before you chop it down? And so that was the intent with the live resin, and running it through butane freshly frozen is kind of how you achieve that. Live rosin came about, I want to say that was 2014 or 15. My dates may be a little wrong, but that came about by squishing flour nugs originally in between parchment paper with your wife, your girlfriend, your hair straightener. Heat and pressure will squeeze out the resin. Now, the difference between flour resin, I can take a nug from my mason jar, heat up a press, and squish it, and that would be flour rosin. The difference, live rosin, is where you take that product, that flour that's about to be harvested, you chop it down, you freeze it, put it in the freezer, and then the process from there is a bubble hash process. So you would take that frozen bud, put it in a vessel with ice and water, and then agitate it, usually with a paddle. Sometimes you can do 3 washes. Sometimes the plant will give you 5 washes. But you'll pull that water and run it through different sieves, essentially, different bags. So you'll have like a 220 micron bag, a 180 micron bag, a 150. You can do a 120, a 90, a 73, and a 40. And each one of those bag sizes, as the number gets lower, the size between the mesh gets smaller. So one of the big differences between live resin and live rosin is when you take a live resin product, you're literally, they call it blasting. You're blasting the butane through that product, and you're getting all spectrums to some extent of that product. With live rosin, we're able to pull just the heads that are just the right size and express it that way. So I can get a pull on live rosin where it's just the 120 bag down to the 90 bag. And the quality from that, if I took just that versus mixing that with the 70 bag below it, the 40 bag below it, some of that, when you get to the 40 bag, you're getting into food grade territory. So the quality and the flavor isn't quite there. So with live rosin, we're able to separate just the best of the best and then take that bubble hash, and then we'll do the same process you would do with the flour nug where we apply heat and pressure. Now, things have moved on since 2015. We're no longer using hair straighteners. There's full companies out there. Pure Pressure makes some really solid rosin presses. Low temp plates also make some solid rosin presses. But then on the cheaper side, Nug Smasher also makes some decent ones. So what we'll do is we'll take the fresh frozen material, we'll agitate it bubble hash wise, we'll pull it and separate it into the different bubble hash bags. We'll take that product, dry it, and then from there we'll press it. And there's a ton of experimentation the whole way through, right? So like, I don't know, if I've never washed a strain before, I can't tell you what bag is going to have the headiest trichomes. Sometimes it's the 120, sometimes it's the 90, usually it's the 90, but sometimes the 70 can have some really killer resin. And I'll typically go through and press each one of those and decide through experiments, and that's the fun part, which one tastes better, which one smells better, and then from there you can kind of look to tailor. Yes, I bet. You can tailor the food grade stuff to make edibles and tinctures and rosin caps, pills and things like that. and then you can take the really heady stuff and just separate that. And yeah, it's a really fun process. It's somewhat time consuming. But it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. So the difference, live resin versus live rosin, is that live resin is kind of a more full spectrum product with butane, with solvents. We can purge those out, and we can get the ppms of that low, but it is not solvent-less. It is utilizing some sort of hydrocarbon extraction method.
Gotcha.
Live resin, we can tailor the heck out of it and really pick the headiest of the headiest and put that out to market. And so you can really find the expression of that plant and put it out there, which is cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see.
Yeah, no, that sounds very, very exciting. And Matt, it's as you were saying in there too, that's your favorite part of the process. I mean, this, even though it is time consuming, it sounds like that infusion part too, like, moving this into foods or tinctures and stuff. I mean, is it something, this sounds like something that you'd feel a lot, maybe a little more strongly than just kind of, smoking even the most potent of bowls. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a dab will do you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I'm definitely interested in trying some of this out. You guys have both. I really appreciate the information here. And again, listener, if you're interested in finding out more of this type of great, in-depth information that these masters are kind of sharing right now, you can go to Aurora, the Ignite Vape and Glass in Aurora this Saturday, the 18th, 4:30 to 9 p.m. And you can ask exactly these questions and find out great stuff there. Guys, what do you right now? Just kind of wrapping some stuff up. You mentioned humidity before and light as a way of kind of keeping consistency in a grow environment. What are maybe some other things to watch out for? Any kind of crop pests? Anything that's top of mind right now for people that's happening in the environment or with the climate in Illinois right now? What's one other thing in their consistent grow environment that they should be watching out for?
Well, the one big thing I'd say is make sure you got the right equipment. Make sure you got a pH pen and you can pH your mixes. Make sure your water's clean as well. That's a big thing I see people messing around with. For me out here is like, if you don't run a solid IPM program, you're going to deal with things that we don't have that west because it's just so much more moist and humid out here. You can lose crops to bud rot really quick, and you can get botrytis like nobody's business. I would just recommend that people stay on their weekly sprays for their IPM, whether it's for bugs or if it's, for mold. And I always recommend that people stick with organic. Obviously, don't spray anything that is going to cause you issues 10 to 15 years down the line.
Right.
But biotactics for like bugs and stuff like that, I know there's a big scare out and about right now with that and people having issues, but I always recommend if you have mites or you have thrips or aphids, to use the correct bugs. Don't just put any willy-nilly thing like ladybugs on your crop. Like, make sure you're getting the proper predator for the pest that you're dealing with. But
Gotcha.
I mean, if you're growing outdoors here in Illinois, definitely want to get your crop down before October. I saw too many people dealing with like caterpillars and just having some of the nastiest bud rot I've seen from outdoor. I would recommend definitely chopping, the first week of October, if not right before.
Gotcha. That's a good note. Definitely the timing of the year, because obviously here in Illinois, climate changes throughout the year. We all know it gets cold and stays that way for a little while. So I think that's a really great point too, is getting out ahead of it and having that sort of cutoff of time in your mind of knowing that as you move forward through the year, there is a point when it becomes a little too late to move your crop forward based on what the conditions are out there. Guys, again, thanks so much, Matt Ross and Ethan Stockton of Deep Space Creations for stopping by today. Matt already knows this, Ethan, but I like to end these things with doing some quick hits. Just what are your favorite, just little things like that. Are you game for this? And Matt, please feel free to jump in as well.
Oh, let's do it. Let's go. Yeah.
Here we go. Quick hits. Number one, I always start with, guys, morning bird or night owl? Which are you?
I'm definitely in morning.
Morning bird for Matt. How about you, Ethan?
I could do either, but I tend to, if I get caught up on a project, I could just keep it going into the wee hours of the night. I drink a ton of coffee, so I could be working on some project up till 2-3 a.m. easy. More of a night owl, I think.
For sure. Hey, and totally understand that. I love coffee myself. Kind of rolls into another question I like to ask my guests: substance of choice. Obviously, cannabis is big for all of us, but I'm always curious if you're a coffee drinker in the morning, if you like tea, if you're a beer or wine person or hard liquor or something. What's and cannabis can be the answer, but what is something that you lean on pretty heavily day to day?
Oh man, every morning gotta have a cup of coffee. There's no other way about it. And I love marrying the caffeine with the cannabis. I think it makes for a pretty even kill.
Right on. Something to eat. Favorite cuisine or a place that you like to go to if you're celebrating something, if you've, just popped another excellent harvest, or you got another one coming down the pipe, or, you've got some event, another one of these breeder features coming up sometime soon. What's either a restaurant or a specific food item that you are definitely going to go hit?
If I'm celebrating, I'm going to be downtown at Publican Quality Meats.
Yes, love that place.
That place is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's West Side, right? Is that West Loop-ish?
Yeah.
Yep.
I would, if they're hiring, I would wash their dishes.
Yeah, that's the way. I love that place. It is great. Listener, if you haven't been, Publican, yes, Meat Market is excellent. How about you, Ethan?
I'd say I keep it pretty simple. There's this place, Maggiano's.
Oh, yeah, let us entertain you. Oh, yeah.
Nothing too crazy, but, kind of a chain, but I like them quite a bit, so.
Same. We, the fiance and I are headed there tomorrow for Valentine's. It wasn't our first choice,
awesome.
but Chicago, 5-6 weeks out, it's too soon for Valentine's reservations, as I learn every year. It's a lesson I have to remember myself. But either way, we're both always happy to go Maggiano's because the pasta, the homey atmosphere, the Italian kind of date night feel. I know exactly what you mean, Ethan. That is it's a good baseline for sure. The floor is high on that. Movies or TV? What are you guys watching? Whether it's a classic you like to leave on, if you see it come on, just flipping through the channels and you see it there, you'll always leave it on. Or if you're kind of wanting to chase some kind of mood or mindset or whatever, just maybe something that always gets you there and you'll seek it out. What's something you like to watch?
Right now, I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld and a lot of Always Sunny.
Yes.
They're both kind of the same show.
Yep.
Bad people behaving badly.
Right. Agreed.
My kids will go to bed. My wife will be winding down, and I'll throw on a couple episodes. And I mean, I've seen them all, but I still find myself chuckling at it.
Yeah, for sure. Those are classics. I totally agree. There's a reason why the Comedy Central's always replaying them, why Netflix is always paying billions of dollars every 5 years just to keep them on the library and stuff. Those are absolutely classics. How about you, Ethan?
I've been watching Yellowstone a lot, here lately. On that, which is a little different. It's good though. Kevin Costner's doing a pretty good job, playing out his Dances with Wolves, but slightly different character.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes in the background, if I just have Netflix running, I'll have old episodes of Chappelle Show running. Just something light in the background where I can step in and just see a skit from back in the day that just makes me crack up. Chappelle Show is always solid, for something that's a little less serious.
It is. Yeah, I totally agree with that completely. Some of those Chappelle Show sketches were just they're gems. They're gems that'll just never get old, and something to go back to constantly. That's just sweet. Right there with you on that. And then finally, I'll go with music for you gentlemen. What's if you're trying to cultivate a certain vibe, if you're maybe in your car at the end of a long workday looking to wind down, or maybe it's sort of the mid to late evening and you've got some kind of event later on and you're trying to get yourself pumped up for it or something. What's an artist or a genre of music that that gets you going?
If I need to cultivate a certain attitude or mood, or I'm down, or I'm up, I always go with Frank Zappa.
Nice.
Probably in my mind, the greatest composer of our time.
Yeah, no argument here. Love that. Love some Zap, man. That's good stuff. How about you, Ethan?
I'd Man, I don't know. I always go back to Led Zeppelin. And
Wow.
then it hit me the other day. I was like, I used to think that was a 30-year-old band because it's just how I felt. But no, 30 years ago was the 90s, so it's we're going back a bit to get to some Zeppelin. But
That's true.
yeah, it's good stuff. It's music that and there's some of the songs that are a little bit more long form and whatnot. As they got a little bit later in their career, but even some of the earlier stuff, it's just kind of it's just good groovy music, funky, something you could dance to. That's got a rock and roll feel to it as well. But definitely love me some Zeppelin.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, they are so good too. There's a reason why I think a lot of those songs became like the anthems that they became. It's you hear a couple of notes and like everybody can recognize Stairway, for instance, and it's like that's just you've left a mark on history that way, and they've done that a couple of times, I think. So perfectly good answers, both of them. And very, very enjoyable, and thanks a lot for those answers to the quick hits and for the excellent information about breeding and about growing in terms of cannabis that both of you guys shared. And listener, just one more time, if you're interested in finding out more about what both of these masters can tell you about growing cannabis, about keeping some good strains going, head to the Ignite Vape and Glass at Aurora Cannabis Club. That's this Saturday, February 18th, 4:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. And you can get some growing advice and free consultations, and they'll also have some of their stuff there to look at and check out. Chem de la Chem is obviously one of their very well-known strains, but they got some very, very excellent variety and some more exciting stuff coming down the pike. So listeners, head out there to Aurora this weekend, and thank you both, Matt Ross and Ethan Stockton, very much for stopping by today and sharing your information. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Don.
Hey, thanks. It was a pleasure.
Indeed. And you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk again.
Bye now.
And now it's time to share with you my strain of the week. I've been brightening up my days with a lovely sativa strain from Cresco Labs. This goes by the name of Sunny Mac. It's an offspring of Alien Cookies and Colombian X Starfighter, a terpene profile mainly consisting of terpenoline, limonene, and B-caryophyllene. Got some citrus notes, lemony, orangey, that's rounded out with hints of clove and mint. The average symptom reports or experiences rather are heady introspective effects and leaving the user feeling happy and uplifted, and eventually a body relief sensation kind of takes over. And that's been my experience of Sunny Mac. It's a bright sativa. It's got that citrusy lemon orange kind of a zesty fruity flavor, which I just adore. It's good any time of the day. The taste is refreshing, and it's a little bit of a boost. Just a couple of minutes after hitting, I found that it is that sort of cerebral, heady high more than it is a body sensation, although you do get a physical feeling, which is very pleasant. And it's just something I definitely recommend. Again, those delicious limonene and terpenoline terpenes there, and the citrusy flavor, the Alien Cookies and Colombian Starfighter. It's a great lineage there, and if you're looking to kind of get a little happy uplift during the day, pick up some Sunny Mac from Cresco Labs at your local Sunnyside dispensary. Cheers. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Very good stuff. This batch of Sunny Mac that I picked up, by the way, got this from the Wrigleyville Sunnyside, where I tend to go. THC average is 26.04. Harvest dates November 28th, 2022, not that long ago. And it was packaged on January 5th. So I picked this up literally a week or so after this was packaged. So very recent harvest date. Tastes very fresh. All of this has been very pleasant. And I'm smoking this Sunny Mac out of a lovely little glass piece that I picked up from 420pipes.com. This is a wonderful website that Nick Thomas, originally of Springfield, Illinois, has put together. It's got a very cool smoke local initiative. So any bud shops or head shops, glass, or any kind of cannabis products shop that's near you, you can just type in your zip code into 420pipes.com, and then that shop will show up in the system, and you can just order products products from there through 420 Pipes, and it'll be shipped right to you. That is that Smoke Local initiative that Nick Thomas has come up with, and they have some wonderful products as well. And even if you don't have a local head shop that you're looking to support, I mean, who doesn't love smoking out of a new glass piece that you haven't used before? I mean, we all deal with the resin, the gunk, the buildup, what I'm calling dead resin going forward, this stuff that gathers in your glass pieces after you use it for a while. It's very tough to clean. They make a lot of good products, but it's still a lot of effort. And, it's sometimes easier to just replace it with something new. And Nick Thomas and 420pipes.com, they sell great pieces just like this one for $4.20 every single day. So you don't break the bank, but it's not cheaply made. It's high quality. It's good glass, locally sourced, a lot of it to Illinois. And again, this stuff will ship right to you. And if you like that idea, they got this sample box. You can subscribe monthly to 420pipes.com, and you can get a box full of new smoking materials that you can try out. A box of goodies will show up in the mail every single month from 420pipes.com. Anything you buy from there, remember to use the promo code CannabisMan at checkout, and you can knock 10% off your cart order. That's 420pipes.com, promo code CannabisMan to knock off 10%.
In 1842, the first comic book is published.
Then, in 1938, a golden age begins.
In 2023, comic book readers were left with one important question.
With all these new #1 comics, who will help us decide which issues to pick up and which issues to stay away from?
I'm Dan.
And I'm Bob.
Join us each and every week as we dissect,
discuss,
and review
a brand new first issue comic book.
Listen to all new, all different #1 comics on
Apple, Google, Overcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's all new, all different #1 comics.
Subscribe and enter our weekly giveaway.
One final note before I let you go this week, listener. A headline crossed my feed a few weeks back, and I wanted to bring it up to you here. Curaleaf announces closure of operations in California, Colorado, and Oregon. The proactive exit will generate additional cash and improve margins in a non-safe banking environment. This was published out of New York by one Tony Lang, January 26th of this year. This is in the Cannabis Business Times publication. I will share the article. It's as they say, Curaleaf Holdings is a leading international provider of consumer cannabis products. I'm sure you've heard of Curaleaf, listener, and they just announced when this came out at the end of last month, the proactive closure of the majority of their operations in California, Colorado, and Oregon starting this month, and they're looking to streamline businesses. They say in an effort to further optimize operations and reduce costs, the company will consolidate cultivation and processing ops in Massachusetts to a single facility in Webster, resulting in the closure of its Amesbury facility. Curaleaf expects to record non-cash restructuring and impairment charges, which it'll detail on its fourth quarter earnings call next month in March. I'm not going to go through the rest of the article. It's pretty dry. If you're interested in this, again, like I said, I'll share it. But the reason I felt this was worth bringing up, listener, is because Curaleaf Holdings is a massive global cannabis company. This corporation has bought up tons and tons of small cannabis operations all across the country and in some other parts of the world. And the fact, in my mind, the fact that they are trying to get ahead of specifically markets in California, Colorado, and Oregon, as well as streamlining stuff in Massachusetts, the fact that they've singled out these states and that Curaleaf is looking to kind of get out of them, at least, again, the first three, California, Colorado, and Oregon, and then change some things in Massachusetts, that to me from this giant company, again, just kind of leans a little more into what I've been talking about on the show, which is that there are some state markets which just have not been doing it as well as some other ones. And that's a totally subjective term, and money made is one way of measuring this, but sustainability and long-term prosperity is another way of looking at it. And even though Colorado, California, Oregon too, they've had many good years now they're all at a point where at least Colorado and Oregon, they're really struggling with the lack of profit margins in their legal cannabis dispensing businesses. The price point has hit the bottom for them, and there's moratorium requests on licenses. I've talked about this before. It's something that I fear can happen when you throw open the gates and let anybody become a licensed dispenser in a legalized cannabis market. When you do that, the average quality inherently comes down, and the cost of making the product, if it's not, rock bottom, all of a sudden those margins are slimmer and slimmer, and the incentive from these companies, and even if they're just craft growers, the incentive from them to really deliver a great product to store shelves, well, there isn't much incentive because they're not getting much profit, even if they do bring a killer product to market. So that's what I worry about with some states. Again, a lot of this is going to change when safe banking passes, and if, hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a rescheduling of cannabis off of Schedule 1, and we finally get this sort of national interstate market of commerce where cannabis products are moving over state lines, and there's sort of a federal oversight kind of a thing. When that happens, things might change, but until it does, every state's out for themselves, and the way things are going now, some states have basically done stuff, and here we are many, many years later, and some of those states are actually really backsliding into a place where I fear their legal cannabis markets may not actually be around for much longer. And I frankly don't want to see that happen in any state in the U.S. or Canada or anywhere else around the world. I'm rooting for legal cannabis. I feel we all should be. And if we're rooting for it long term, we need to see it succeed. And that is not what's happening in some states like Colorado and Oregon. So it's just something to keep an eye out for, something I thought I would bring to your attention with Curaleaf shutting down. That's a major, major company which is shutting down operations in those states. And I think that just kind of heralds a future a little bit like what I've been talking about on this show. Just something to keep in mind as other states are legalizing and as people are, kind of complaining about how states are doing things differently. I don't think you can complain too hard when people are trying in real time to suss out something and, save it for the future as well. You want to make sure that it goes well long, down the road into the future, not just now in the short term. You want to make sure legal cannabis is bright and prosperous down the road as well. That's all I got for you this week, listener. I want to thank again my guests, Matt Ross and Ethan Stockton. Hopefully you can check out more of what they were talking about this weekend in Aurora at the Ignite Vape and Glass, that cannabis workshop, and the free consultations that Deep Space Creations is offering. But if not this weekend, then they'll be doing some of that in the future. And I will bring another episode to you in the future with a guest interview, more news and information about cannabis as it becomes legalized and normalized right here in the U.S. and around the world in this year of 2023. Lots of exciting stuff ahead for all of us, and especially here on the Cannabis Man podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is an original production of myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson. Other music by Pat Perez, and logo designed by Vorbroker Media. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe, and share whenever you can.
Hello, this is Ruin Willow, and you are listening to the Oh, Fuck Yeah with Ruin Willow podcast. This is erotica, romance author, podcaster, sex blogger, Ruin Willow. And on my podcast, I talk about all things related to sex, sexuality, sexual health, erotica. I want to help you enjoy your life and have better sex using the tools of erotica, erotic audio, and interviews talking with sexuality experts in the field of sexual health, sexuality, and sexual wellness. Come listen to my podcast. I have a wide range of topics and fiction erotica storytelling. Oh, fuck yeah, with Ruin Willow podcast.